Hey guys, Crystal Thompson here for Simon Says Stamp. I have these three really cool cards. We're using the February 2020 card kit. We are doing some messy watercolor with heat embossing with clear ink. Then we're doing some blending on colored cardstock, also included in the kit. And then keeping it simple with some Schoolhouse Red cardstock and embellishing with the Nouveau embellishments in the kit. So stay tuned. Be sure to click subscribe so you get notifications on new videos. All the products are listed below. Hey guys, Crystal Thompson. So we are going to get started with our first card. We're going to be using, of course, the contents of the kit. And these set of cards is just going to be a little more colorful. You're going to be using the embossing and watermarking from Simon. We're going to be using some white embossing powder, then distress oxides and festive berries and worn lipstick. You need a blender brush, and then from the kit you're going to be using the window frames. We're going to be doing the beautiful floral one, and then for the sentiment we are using the big hugs. All of this has already been placed on my Misty, and I have one of the pieces of the cotton candy cardstock pre-cut and ready to go. So we are going to begin by doing our heat embossing first. And by this, we're going to be just doing the very popular technique of the resist emboss. So with that being said, let's begin. So we're going to have our Simon Says, we're going to ink it up. Make sure your stamp pad is nice and wet. And I usually like to pre-ink all my stamp pads before I do any videos. All the products that I'm using are down below in the video description, and then also on my blog at crystal-thompson.com. And of course, this is the Simon Says February 2020 kit. Okay, so I have that done. Let's see what we got here. I'm pretty happy. I feel like it's a bit blotchy there at the edge, so I'm just going to come back and do that. And I feel like the little blocks on the Misty sometimes kind of hold up your ink pad on that edge, but we're ready to roll. Okay, we're going to just remove this and set this aside, and then we're going to bring in our white embossing powder, which I have ready to go. And I'm going to use a spoon to place my embossing powder on the card. So I'm just going to switch it over to do the other half, and I don't get a huge mess of embossing powder all over the place. I'm going to be sure to saturate my stamp image, and I'm going to come back down and do this bottom part again. I'm going to shake off any excess. So there you have it. And if you have a little bit of embossing powder that won't come off, you use a little brush to remove it. Okay, with that being said, we're going to do some heat setting. When you're heat setting white embossing powder, be sure not to leave your gun on it for too long, as it does tend to make it disappear. And we're just going to follow through. And I really love this image. I feel like you can color it, you can heat emboss it, do watercolor, you can do emboss resist, you can do wet stamping. I mean, there is just so many possibilities with these frames, and I love that it's not only Valentine's Day, but you've got birthdays and thank yous in that stamp set. Okay, so I got it all. Gonna drop it, it's a bit hot, and then we're gonna just make sure that we got all the pieces. And we do, so that's what we got. I'm going to set the gun aside. Be sure you don't touch the tip because it can be hot. Then we are going to bring in a scrap of paper, and let me show you. I actually like to use purple tape on my Misty because it holds it down, and then the magnets don't get in the way. So I still have that tape down on it, so we're going to use that same tape to allow us to hold on to that cardstock and do our ink blending. So we're going to begin with the lightest of the shades that I chose. So we're going to begin with worn lipstick. And you're probably wondering why we're using the lightest shade. Okay, so we're going to begin with this worn lipstick. And we're not necessarily going to start right at the bottom. We're going to just try about a 1/4 of an inch from the bottom. The reason why is that we want to get that ombre effect, but we don't want it to be so dark that we lose that pink. So we're just going to bring this color up and then stop your coloring about a 1/4 at the top. And then we're going to be doing just blending up there. So right now we're just adding color and then bring that color up to the top. And it just makes it really, really nice. And then now that we're done with that, we're not going to grab any more color. We're simply just going to blend. So some of that pink cardstock is exposed. Okay, once that's done, then we're gonna grab our festive berries, which is a kind of a red. We're gonna use the same blender, and that way it looks really, really nice and it blends a lot easier. And we're gonna add that at the bottom. And again, this is a very Valentine's Day card, the color combos on it. Be sure that you add the majority of your colors at the bottom of your cardstock, and then blend up into that pink. And so that's why we didn't start at the bottom with that pink, because it would, one, be a waste of ink color, and two, you wouldn't get that gradient up. Okay, so we have that. Don't worry about not, you know, like you can't see that embossing is just not popping through, but once this dries and we clean it up, it cleans up really nicely. So you can come back down and add more of that red. If you want to get even a darker red, you're more than welcome to do that as well. We're just going to keep it nice and simple. Once that's done, we're going to bring in our mini mister, and it's just water. So the water is going to react with that ink. We're going to let it sit for a little bit, let it dry, and then we're going to clean off the entire thing. All right, so it's fully dry. I've cleaned it up. You have a little bit of dimension from the water spritz, but see how beautiful that heat embossing came up. All right, so you're wondering, why did we do it on pink cardstock? Why not just do it on white? Well, this is why. Then you have that gradient variation from the ink blended one to your matted. So this is gonna be just a slightly larger cardstock. We're gonna add some adhesive on the back, and then we are going to place it on that white cardstock, and it just makes it look super, super fun. And again, you're just using the contents of that Simon Says stamp kit. For embellishment, we are going to bring in the gorgeous embellishments included in the kit. We're just going to add a couple little drops of clear adhesive. You can get really wild with it, but we're just going to keep it nice and simple, and we're going to be using the white ones. So we're going to do the little white hearts. And then we're going to move on to the light pink ones, because I feel like that really matches that pink cardstock included in the kit. And so that's our first card. Look how fun, super easy, very easy gradient variations, and then you have a very clean edge using the pink. All right, for our next card, we're going to be using the beautiful florals from the window frames, and we're going to be using the I Love You. We're going to be doing all of this on the gorgeous Schoolhouse Red cardstock that I have already placed on my Misty. You see the florals ready to go, and then you have the red cardstock that is going to hold the embellishment. You're going to need some gold embossing, and you're going to need embossing and watermark ink. So to begin, we of course are going to prep our cardstock. We want it to be super clean, so I have some of the Embossing Buddy, and my brush is pretty much done, but you can still use it. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to add some of that Embossing Buddy cornstarch. Then I have just a brush, and we're just going to move that around, and what it's going to do, it's going to remove any static or any oils from our fingers that's going to hold the little specks of embossing powder. And again, I want it to be super clean and very, very elegant. And don't worry about the white. We can always come back with a dry piece of paper, such as a paper towel or a cloth, depending on what you want to use, to remove that white residue. Okay, my cardstock is being held with some double-sided tape. And now we're going to begin our heat embossing. So I'm going to turn this around, or bring it down for you. We're going to be using the watermark ink. And the reason we're doing it on a mist as opposed to an acrylic block, this specific image, the florals, has a lot of details, and I feel that we just need to really get them all. So we're going to press this down. And one of the beauties of using that cornstarch is that you can see exactly where you missed it. And then in this case, we didn't miss anything. So we're going to remove that, get this out of the way, and bring in our gold. And this is that gold fine detail from Simon. And we're going to do 2 halves. So we're going to begin with the first half, trying to work nice and quickly since our ink is nice and moist still. We're going to flip this around and ink up the other side, or cover the other side with the embossing powder. So we have that ready to go. And now we can go ahead and heat set. So we're going to grab our heat gun, and we're going to work on one side. And it's really fun to see it pop through. It makes it super, super bright. And this Schoolhouse Red is just so versatile. I used it for Christmas cards. If you watched any of my Christmas videos using the card kit, we use Schoolhouse Red. You can use it Valentine's Day and then Mother's Day. I feel like red is totally allowed for Mother's Day. This is very pretty cardstock. Okay, we're going to finish up that heat embossing there. We got everything, and we're just going to set that aside. Remove this. And then we're going to bring in that little strip that I was talking to you guys about. We're going to ink up the I love you. Make sure that we get it right side up. And we're going to do right at the center. And then with some tweezers, we're just going to lift that edge. And then we can go ahead and do more of this gold. I'm just going to shake it. So as you can see, we have a little bit of residue on this because we didn't prep it. So that's the importance of prepping with some cornstarch to prevent any staticness and any of that little flecks. So there we go. So now we have the I love you and the red cardstock. So we're going to bring in a dry piece of paper towel, and we are going to just clean this off so we can expose how pretty this really is. And there you have it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of foam to that back of that I love you, and that's going to raise it. So we're going to, I have a little piece here. What we're going to do is we're going to remove that backing. Try not to touch it too much. And as you can see, this is a little bit larger and wider than the cardstock we're using. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold it, and what's going to do is going to bring that dimension to another level, because now you have 2 layers of foam. So I'm going to bring that I love you. We're going to pop it on that back, and it's going to be a little bit loose, but I don't want to press it too hard. And then the way we're going to press it down is by pressing down the actual cardstock. So cardstock to foam. So we have that first layer. Now we can begin with embellishing if you choose. So we're going to bring in our Nuvo. These are beautiful embellishments included in the kit. So again, we're going to grab our embellishment wand and our liquid. And these are in a teardrop shape. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to shape the teardrops to look like it's splashing out of that sentiment. And I did that first with my glue. Let me show you. Bring that in. Okay, now I have the drops. So I'm going to put these down and flip them down so we can see it. So they're this beautiful aquamarine color. And we're going to grab the largest ones because they do come in various sizes, and we're going to do the large ones right on the center, and then use the little guys or medium size to have them look again like they're splashing out of this sentiment. So I'm going to just dump them all. I'm going to grab this little guy and place it. So that green and that red are just a beautiful combination of colors. Grab the other end of our wand, and don't worry too much about the adhesive because it will dry clear. These are so pretty that I almost feel like you could make a piece of jewelry with it. Okay, I'm using the itty bitty guys. As you can see, they're just absolutely tiny, and I think the hardest part is grabbing them. Okay, there we go. Okay, and one more, we are done with this. Okay, there we have it. Now we can place this on our card base and be ready to go, but isn't that such a pretty card using just very basic supplies with heat embossing and cardstock? Alright, for this card, we are going to be keeping it simple. Again, we're going to be using 3 colors of embossing powders. But before we go to that, let me show you what we're going to be using. We're using the window frames. Of course, this is part of the 2020 February Simon Says Stamp Kit. We're using the florals. We're doing a very messy, very fast watercolor. Then we're going to be using Thank You For Everything, and by doing so, we're going to do the For Everything on this piece of pink cardstock that was also included in the kit, and I have just trimmed it down. This is the cotton candy, and then this is going to be the base. So here is our white cardstock, and we're going to do some clear heat embossing on this. I have that floral frame ready to go. So we're going to begin using our Simon Says Stamp clear embossing ink, and we are going to heat emboss this in clear just so it keeps the shape. And by doing that, messy watercolor is going to keep it nice and clean lines so they don't get lost. Okay, so once that's done, we are going to stamp this down, and I'm using the Misty, and that white cardstock ended up being just a little bit shorter than the image, but that's okay because we are going to mat it on that cotton candy cardstock. So we have pressed this down. I'm going to remove that, set that aside, and we're going to bring in our clear embossing ink. So this is a way to do some watercolor resist and not doing it super, super difficult. Okay. We're going to do the other side, and we're going to heat set. And because it's clear, I'm not going to put you through the noise and bustle of heat embossing clear. Okay, now that that's fully heat embossed, I know you can't see it because it's clear, but it just makes it look super fun. You're going to see these pop up. While we're going to be using some Zig Clean Color colors in various shades of pink and green, just want to let you know we're not going to be adding a ton of water because this is not watercolor cardstock. So to begin, we're just going to be doing some of the edges. So I have one of these roses. Then I'm going to grab my wet brush. It's just moist, but it's not completely soaked, and we're just going to move that color and let it sit in there. And again, it's going to be kind of a messy watercolor. We're not paying a ton of attention to blending, just really adding that color, and it makes it super fast when you have a very detailed image such as this one. It gives it a little bit of dimension by having those various color gradients. I'm going to try to keep all the same flowers within that shade, and this shade is called Peach Pink. And again, if you find that your brush is too wet, just have a paper towel handy where you can just dry that. We got one on this corner. And just move that color along. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the leaves that are not right next to it because we don't want to have any of those colors bleeding with each other. So we're just going to grab that. Be sure your brush is clean. Gonna do this, and again, super, super easy. We're gonna skip that. We're gonna do this corner. We're gonna move on to the next corner. So as you can see, I know you can't see the white or the clear embossing, but it really pops up, and it gives it that very soft look, and it's just really quite pretty, especially when making Valentine's cards or thank you cards such as this. Okay, quite happy with that. So now we're gonna move on to our next green, and this is mid green. It's kind of an olivey color. So we're just gonna add to the next, and we're gonna move this on. Apologize about that crashing there. We're gonna color these leaves, moving quickly, grabbing that color, and really just spreading it around to make this a super quick coloring card. Last but not least, we're going to be using this flamingo pink. And I was trying to use variations of pink to really have it match that cardstock. Oop, forgot to clean my brush. There we go. And that flamingo pink is very, very bright, but it makes it look really fun. So you want to come add some details, you're more than welcome to. Just give it a little more dimension to it. And we're just going to let that dry for just a couple seconds, and we're going to move on to heat embossing our sentiments using two colors of heat embossing. We're going to be doing gold and white. All right, so as we wait for that to dry, we are going to be doing our heat embossing on our strips. So we're going to be doing the For Everything because we're doing thank you, and we're going to be doing this with white embossing powder. So I'm going to grab my embossing ink again. And I really love mix and matching different colors of embossing powder just because it gives it a different look. It makes it look more like a professional store-bought card, even though it's not. And, you know, that's much, much cooler. So we're going to do that for everything. You don't necessarily have to do the heat embossing now as long as you have your powder on it. Okay, now we're going to move on to the center of our watercolor cardstock here. I'm going to be using Thank You. So I'm going to put this over to the side and bring in the gold. And of course, all of these are Simon Says Stamp embossing powders. And they are one of my favorites just because they are super fine. And the links are listed below. So I have this Thank You. I'm going to stamp it not quite centered, but over on the left corner of the card. And really allowing that cardstock to absorb that color or that ink. And I'm going to bring this in and cover that Thank You. And I have a little missing spot there. And so then we're going to proceed to heat set both of these, which will make it super quick, and then we can move on to assembling our card. Okay. Super easy, super fast. Now we can assemble our card. So I have our cotton candy ready to go. So all we're going to do is we're going to flip this over. We are going to grab either our score tape if you want to use it or your Tombow. The score tape is included in the kit, so be sure to utilize what you got. Okay. Then we're going to place it. Try to center. All right. And then we're going to bring in our strip, and this one we're actually going to lift it. So we're going to flip this over. We're going to grab some foam and detail scissors, and we're going to cut just a tiny little strip from it. So it'll make it nice and easy to place that. Okay. And then cut the edge, and then we're going to figure out where this is at. So we're going to put it on the edge that has the embossing, so it's really nice and lifted and a solid, and then we're going to just bring it down here. Then at this point you can embellish with whatever you like. I'm going to leave it nice and clean. I feel like there's just enough color, and you know, I feel like we just need to flicker this with some color. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring back the darkest pink that we used earlier, which was pink number 25. Grab our water brush or our mister. I'm going to just add a little bit of water to create some pigment, and then grab our brush, and then we're going to flick that brush onto that. Okay, so I have my brush. We're going to grab that, and we're just going to flick a little bit, just keeping it nice and clean. And there we have it. Just gives a little more dimension. Super, super easy to do. That does it, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today doing these really fun cards using the Simon Says Stamp 2020 card kit. The products and card kit link is below. If you end up watching this and the kit's sold out, everything's available in individual components. So you can get the stamp set, you can get the different embellishments all separate. I really hope you've enjoyed these tutorials. Be sure to click a like and subscribe. And if you really like it, be sure to share. My handle on Instagram is Crystal_Thompson_design. And be sure to tag me when you create something inspired by this, because I love to see what you make. Again, Crystal Thompson, have an amazing day.